Revealed, how a heartwarming kiss during vows changed 1,000,000 lives in an incredible twist. The sun shone brightly on the charming town of Willow Creek, casting a golden glow on the blooming spring flowers that danced in the soft breeze. Grace, a humble, hard-working single mother, stood in her small backyard, surrounded by a buzz of energy. Today was the most significant day of her life, her wedding day. Her son, Noah, played with the flowers, unaware of the magic unfolding around him. Grace smiled, feeling the warmth of hope fill her heart. She didn't just long for love, she yearned for a brighter future for Noah, who deserved every bit of happiness. Neighbors flocked to help, each bringing a dish for the potluck, their laughter mingling with songbirds. Mrs. Johnson from next door had made her infamous chocolate pie, while Mr. Smith crafted decorations from wildflowers and twine. Together, they painted an enchanting scene of community spirit, where bonds of neighborly love flowed freely. It was a tapestry woven from shared moments, laughter, and support. But beneath the cheerful facade, a storm brewed. Grace's estranged father, a Vietnam veteran she hadn't seen in years, had come back into her life, stirring memories she buried deep. The past loomed like dark clouds on the horizon, reminding her of the pain of abandonment. Her father had thought that leaving was for the best, that shame would protect them. A tightness formed in her chest, an emotional weight that threatened to crush her as the wedding day approached. As the ceremony started, Grace stood before her fiancé, her heart a whirlwind of emotions. The crowd beckoned in anticipation. Nose to nose with her love, she spoke vows filled with words of struggle and dreams. Each syllable reflected years of battling life's trials. As she whispered the final "I do," their lips met in a kiss that felt electric, radiating love and unity. For the townsfolk, it symbolized hope, an untangling of the past and a promise of beginnings anew. Then, as if time suspended, her father stepped forward, trembling yet resolute. Silence fell like a blanket over the yard. Tension shut everyone's mouths as he prepared to share his story, the crowd holding their breath. With a shaky voice, he revealed a sacrifice made years ago, an act of love he believed would shield Grace and Noah from his perceived failures. Gasps filled the air, eyes widened in disbelief. He had thought leaving was a protection, now, revealed secrets painted a different picture altogether. Grace's heart raced. Here she was, standing at the intersection of heartache and redemption. The mix of forgiveness and pain made the air thick with possibility. The townsfolk, who faced their own struggles, knew this moment resonated deeply. They watched, unsure of how this would unfold. Would Grace find it in her heart to harbor forgiveness for a man who had caused so much hurt? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the ceremony hung in the balance, their gazes locked, Grace's heartbeat echoed in her ears. Behind her, the townsfolk shifted, waiting with bated breath for her decision. Would she embrace vulnerability, or would the weight of abandonment prove too much to bear? This moment, when Grace collided with pain, had the power to redefine everything. A whisper of hope stirred in the crowd, a collective wish for healing in their tightly knit community. What awaited them on the other side of Grace's choice? Grace stood frozen, her heart a storm of emotions. Her father, once a mere shadow in her life, had just laid bare the most painful chapter of their shared history. She felt the heat of the sun on her skin, but a chill ran through her. The faces before her, filled with concern and curiosity, blurred as tears threatened to spill. "No," she whispered, barely audible. She had imagined this day for years, weaving dreams of love and acceptance, but now reality felt like shards of glass in her heart. "Dad," her voice trembled as she took a step toward him. In that moment, all the bitterness from years of silence hung in the air like a heavy fog. She wanted to scream, to run away, but instead, she stood still, anchored by the gravity of his confession. Noah, sensing his mother's unease, paused playing, his small brows knitted in worry. He looked up, searching for comfort in Grace's eyes. The innocent gaze of her son stirred something deep within her, a flicker of hope, a yearning for love to triumph over pain. The crowd, still silent, felt the weight of history unfolding. The very air thickened with anticipation. Mr. Smith cleared his throat, as if to break the spell. "It's never too late," he murmured, his voice a gentle urging. "I just wanted to protect you," her father said, stepping closer, his own voice cracking under the strain of years lost. "I made the wrong choice, Grace. I thought leaving would spare you more pain." As he spoke, images of her childhood flashed through her mind. The empty chair at the dinner table, the missed birthdays, the silent echoes of laughter that never was. Memories wrapped in longing wrapped around her harder than ever before. "And it only hurt us more." Grace shot back, her voice now rising, vulnerability igniting into anger. "You think that running away was protecting us? It broke us. I spent years wondering why you didn't want me. Why didn't you fight for your family?" His face crumpled, lined with remorse that spoke volumes. "I was scared. Scared I wouldn't be enough, angry at myself. I still am." With each word, the walls she built around her heart trembled. The sin of silence held her captive, and yet, standing on the precipice of forgiveness felt terrifyingly liberating. Could she truly let go of the years they'd lost? The chance of healing seemed frightfully close yet unbelievably out of reach. "Grace," her father began again, desperation threading through his words. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I only want a chance to make it right if you'll let me." The silence surged into a wave of emotion. Grace looked at her son first, who still watched with wide innocent eyes. Then she turned back to her father, a part of her yearning for the bond they once had, a connection that could have been. Could she truly wrestle with the past and free herself from its burden? The warmth of her fiancé's hand squeezed hers, a silent support rallying around them. Grace closed her eyes, feeling the vibrations of hope in her heart. For the first time in years, the possibilities felt infinite. "Dad," she breathed, her voice steady but soft. "Maybe I don't have to choose, maybe healing starts with understanding and giving it a chance." But before she could finish, a sudden sound erupted from the back of the crowd. A figure emerged, fiery eyes blazing. "Wait!" shouted a woman, her voice laced with urgency. "You don't know the whole story." Gasps rippled through the crowd as all eyes turned toward the newcomer. The air thickened with tension again, and Grace's stomach dropped. What revelation hung in the balance, waiting to surface? Who was this woman, and how was she tied to the twisted roots of Grace's past? The moment crackled with uncertainty as the mystery unfolded, inviting them all deeper into a story that was far from over. The woman stepped forward, her presence commanding. Black hair framed her face, and her eyes held a fiery intensity that seemed to ignite the air around her. The murmurs in the crowd crescendoed, a blend of curiosity and confusion swirling in a chaotic dance. "Who are you?" Grace managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest, each passing second laden with expectation. "I'm Alyssa," the woman replied, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "And I'm here because of what your father left unsaid." The crowd held its breath, as if anticipating the unveiling of some grand secret. "Oh, great," Grace murmured under her breath, half annoyed and half intrigued. More drama. But deep down, she felt a quiver of anticipation. "What do you mean?" Alyssa took a breath, steadying herself. "I used to be your father's partner, in ways more than just business. We shared dreams, laughter, and plans, but life had other ideas." Confusion flashed in Grace's eyes. "Partner? Like, in a romantic sense?" It felt like a stab in the heart, conflicting emotions wrestling within her. She turned to her father, searching for any sign that this could be false, but his face revealed nothing but sorrow. Yes, Alyssa confirmed, her gaze unyielding. But it wasn't just that. You see, your father left because he thought the choices he made would protect you. He didn't want you to bear the consequences of our decisions. He thought it would be easier if he disappeared. With every word, Grace felt her world tilt. The years of resentment and anger tangled with this new information, making her dizzy. So you're saying he didn't just leave our family to protect us? He ran from the consequences of his own choices? Alyssa nodded, a sadness shadowing her features. He was scared. Just like you, he feared judgment. He believed that disappearing was the best way to shield you from heartbreak. Grace's heart raced, chased by a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She glanced at Noah, who was still observing with those trusting eyes, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. This was about much more than her father's absence, it was about the lives around her, the ripple effect stemming from one person's choices. Why should we believe you? Grace asked, her voice shifting between skepticism and an intense desire for truth. What proof do you have? Alyssa hesitated, glancing down as if searching for something buried deep within her. Because I'm pregnant with his child. The gasp from the crowd sliced through the heavy silence like a knife. A collective shock rippled through the onlookers, and Grace's mind reeled. A brother or sister? A sibling she had never known? For a moment, she was speechless, grappling with the profound implications. Why now? She finally whispered, her throat catching on the weight of it all. Why wait until now to come forward? I didn't want to disrupt any healing process, Alyssa replied, her eyes narrowing slightly as if reflecting her own struggles. But holding this truth in, it ate away at me. I watched your father suffocate under the burden of his past without realizing the future he wasn't even aware he might have. In that moment, an unexpected empathy blossomed in Grace's heart for the woman before her. This wasn't just about her father, it was an entire web of lives intertwined. As a flicker of understanding ignited within her, Grace felt a pang of hope amid the chaos. Could this shadowy figure offer clarity instead of further heartbreak? Maybe it's not just about forgiveness, Grace thought, her mind racing. Maybe it's about reconnection. But the question spun like a whirlwind. Can this actually lead to healing, or will it just break us further? She whispered to herself, heart racing with uncertainty. Alyssa stepped closer, her voice easing into softness. I want to help you understand. We can navigate this together, but you have to trust me. Grace exhaled slowly, feeling the heaviness pulling at her heart. She glanced at her father, who stood frozen but yearning for reconciliation, then at Alyssa, who seemed ready to lift a veil from the past. With tensions unraveling around her, she felt a flicker of courage surfacing within. Maybe she began, just maybe, this is the moment to confront our truth and see what healing could emerge from it. As she spoke, doubts lingered, wrapping around her like shadows. Could they truly confront the web of the past and start anew? Would the bonds they could build be stronger than the pain they endured? Just then, a commotion erupted in the crowd, a new wave of energy disrupting the fragile atmosphere. What now? Grace thought, her heart racing as she prepared for whatever came next. The story was far from over, and she felt the weight of history compelling her to unravel it piece by piece. But what more was waiting to surface in this tangled narrative? The crowd surged with a sudden rush of voices, like a wave crashing against a beach. The unexpected commotion sent shivers down Grace's spine. She turned, drawing in a sharp breath, as the scene around her unfolded in chaos, people whispering, some stepping back, eyes darting from face to face. What is happening? She whispered, an uneasy knot settling in her stomach. Just as she spoke, a figure emerged through the throng. Tall and broad-shouldered, a man pushed his way past the crowd, distress etched into his features. Grace's breath caught in her throat when she recognized him, an old acquaintance of her father's, Daniel, the family lawyer. His presence felt like a sudden chill, pulling her deeper into the unfolding mystery. "Grace!" he called out, his voice urgent and firm, cutting through the hushed murmurings. "We need to talk. It's important." Everything inside her felt heavy as his gaze met hers, filled with urgency. She felt Alyssa's presence beside her, a grounding force amid the rising tension. "What is it?" Grace managed, her voice a fragile whisper. Daniel kept moving closer, even as the crowd parted for him, curiosity etched across their faces. "It's about your father. There's something you need to know, something you should see," he said, glancing around as if afraid of eavesdroppers. Alyssa shifted slightly, her expression tense. "No. This isn't the time, Daniel. We're already dealing with enough." "Trust me," he replied, locking eyes with Grace. "This one wait. It could change everything." Her heart pounded erratically, a mix of fear and hope swirling within her. All she could think of was the weight of the moment, where the truth dangled like a fragile thread. If her life was about to shift again, she didn't want it to be a blind plunge into the unknown. "All right," Grace said, her voice firm. "What do you need to show me?" Daniel gestured towards the edge of the gathering, motioning for her to follow. She exchanged a glance with Alyssa, who nodded slightly, as if encouraging her to pursue answers. Together, they followed him through the crowd, the whispers echoing in their wake. As they stepped away, the air felt charged, as if anticipation glowed in the space between them. Grace breathed deeply, trying to calm the racing thoughts and anxious questions swirling in her mind. Every step felt heavier than the last. Daniel led them to a quieter spot, where the crowd faded into the background. He paused, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "I know this may be overwhelming," he began slowly. "But I found something your father left behind that could shed light on all of this." Tension filled the air. Grace felt her pulse quicken. "What is it?" she demanded, unable to hide her impatience. He reached into his briefcase and produced an envelope, aged and slightly worn. This was found among his belongings. He handed it to her, the paper crinkling beneath her fingers, weighty with secrets. With a nod of encouragement from Alyssa, Grace slowly opened it. Unfolding the contents, she discovered a series of letters, each marked by her father's familiar handwriting. Her heart raced as she scanned the first lines. Words flowed from the past, filled with confessions, regrets, and sentiments that felt both intimate and foreign. "Read it," Daniel urged gently. And so she did, inching through each letter, absorbing the thoughts and emotions that spilled forth. The ink revealed a side of her father she had never seen: lost dreams, unanswered questions, love for a child he never thought he could face again. Meanwhile, Alyssa stood beside Grace, eyes shining with a mixture of hope and sorrow. "What did he say?" she murmured as Grace's expression began to shift, understanding dawning. But just as the first flicker of hope illuminated the darkness, a distant sound broke through the heavy air: a siren, approaching quickly. The crowd began to part again, this time with a sense of urgency that sent shivers down Grace's spine. What now? Grace thought, a new wave of anxiety crashing over her. Just as clarity was about to settle, it felt like the ground was shifting beneath her once again, pulling her into yet another uncertainty. "Grace, we have to move," Daniel urged, glancing back as more figures emerged in the distance. "This is bigger than any of us realized." As they began to step away from their moment of revelation, Grace held on to the letters tightly, feeling the weight of the world shift once more. Just when she thought she could confront her father's past, another storm was brewing on the horizon. What would that storm bring, and would her own path be forever altered as the truth surged forward? Grace's heart raced as she felt the urgency in Daniel's voice. The siren grew louder, cutting through the whispers of the crowd like a knife. Adrenaline rushed through her veins, mixing with the confusion and fear swirling in her mind. Every sound seemed amplified, every face a shadow of concern. What danger awaited just beyond the mass of bodies? "Where do we go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes scanning the chaos around them. Daniel barely hesitated. "We need to get to the car. It's parked a few blocks away." He started moving, an anchor pulling her forward. Alyssa nudged Grace gently, urging her to follow. As they navigated through the now frenetic crowd, Grace felt that the letters remained a tether to her father, each one holding a piece of the man she thought she knew. But now, all the words she read bled into her thoughts. A lifetime of questions stemmed from their ink. What had her father been hiding, and why had it mattered enough to write? And how would the revelation of those secrets shape her future? Sweat beaded on her forehead as they reached the edge of the gathering. The sirens echoed, now just around the corner, racing toward them in a frenzy. Daniel kept glancing back, his worry palpable. "We need to hurry." At their heels, the crowd surged, people jostling and hurrying to find safety, to obey the command that hung heavy in the air. Grace caught a glimpse of a police car, lights flashing, slicing through the twilight. A wave of anxiety crashed over her. This wasn't just about her father's legacy anymore, it was about survival. They rounded the corner, and Grace felt the icy bite of fear clenching her heart. "What if this has to do with him?" she blurted out, her voice trembling. "What if someone wants to?" "Don't think like that," Alyssa interrupted, grabbing her hand tightly. "We're going to figure this out together." The reassurance in Alyssa's voice grounded her, even as panic clawed at her insides. Following Daniel, they burst into a dimly lit alley, the shadows amplifying the unease around them. Suddenly, Daniel stopped, stuffing his briefcase under his arm. "We can't just run blindly. I know a shortcut." "Shortcut to where?" Grace snapped, frustration bubbling in her belly. "What's really going on?" His expression darkened. "I suspect your father was involved in something dangerous. The letters, they're more than just thoughts. They connect to a web of secrets that someone wants to keep buried." The weight of those words felt like a physical blow. Grace stared at him, feeling the swift passage of time work against her. "What do you mean? Was he in trouble?" "I think he was trying to protect you. But now, whatever he uncovered may have put you in danger as well." Daniel's voice trembled slightly. The alley grew colder, the shadows seeming to close in around them. Grace clutched the letters as if they were lifelines. Her world was spiraling into chaos, and with each step, the darkness loomed larger. They approached a van parked discreetly at the end of the alley, its engine running softly. Daniel motioned for them to get in. "This will get us to safety," he insisted, darting glances back toward the street. Alyssa seemed to hesitate. "We're trusting you, Daniel." "But if this turns out to be a trap at 1T, he interrupted firmly. "I promise." As they climbed inside, Grace's stomach twisted. Doubts flooded her mind. This was about to change everything. What future awaited them on the other side of fear? Just as they were about to pull away, a voice boomed from the end of the alley. "Stop. This is the police." In that moment, the weight of truth pressed against her, overwhelming her senses. Grace squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself for what lay ahead. Would they be lightened by the truth or crushed by a secret far darker than they ever imagined? The van's engine revved loudly, and a choice loomed ahead. Would they flee into the unknown or face what was coming head-on? The air crackled with tension. Grace's heart raced faster than the sirens echoing behind them. She felt Daniel's hand grip the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as he yelled for everyone to duck. The van lurched forward, tires squealing against the pavement, a feral sound against the groaning pandemonium outside. "We can't get caught," Daniel shouted, his voice harsh with adrenaline. "Just keep your heads down." Alyssa pressed herself against the window, trying to peer out at the chaotic street. "They're looking for us." "Why would they even want you, Grace?" "I don't know," Grace shouted back, panic choking her words. "But we can't let them take those letters." The letters felt impossibly heavy in her lap, each one a shackle binding her to a mystery she barely understood. Daniel glanced at her, his eyes darting between the road and her face. "Those letters connect your father to something dangerous. There's a reason we're running." "But what did he get involved in? What was he protecting me from?" Grace's voice cracked, the truth sending a ripple of fear through her. Daniel took a deep breath, articulating his words like a careful surgeon. "Your father discovered something that could bring down people in powerful positions. And they will do anything to keep that from happening." Grace could feel the world shifting under her feet, the fragile ground of her understanding of her father crumbling away. The sweet memories of laughing together as a child collided with this dark reality. Her father, the loving man who tucked her in at night, was entangled in a web of deceit and danger. The van skidded around a corner, headlights slicing through the darkness. They entered an industrial area, the vast buildings looming like sentinels watching their every move. "I'm taking us to a safe house," Daniel said, his voice steady even as fear flickered in his eyes. "We can regroup and figure out our next steps." They finally pulled up to a nondescript building surrounded by high fences. Daniel jumped out first, motioning for Grace and Alyssa to follow. "Stay close. We can't afford to be seen." Grace's breath came in sharp gasps as they dashed toward the entrance. She felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, more than just her father's secrets, but an entire life turned upside down in mere moments. In the safe house, they closed the door, cutting off the world outside. Inside, the walls felt confining, a stark reminder of their predicament. "What now?" Grace asked, her voice little more than a whisper. "You read the letters. There must be something in there that can help us understand what your father was involved in," Daniel urged. Alyssa leaned over, her expression serious. "But is reading them safe? What if someone is watching us?" Daniel shook his head, his determination unwavering. "We don't have time to hesitate. Grace, you must remember everything. It's the only way we can make sense of what's happening." Feeling a swell of defiance rise within her, Grace nodded. "All right. I'll read them again." She took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm settle over her as she reached for the letters. Each envelope felt like the weight of her father's unspoken love and the burden of his choices. With trembling hands, she began to unfold the first letter, her heart hammering as if each word could crack a door wide open. "Wait," Daniel interrupted, looking through a small window that overlooked the street. His face turned pale. "They're coming. They've found us." Moments stretched painfully as she stared at Daniel's tense posture. Would they find out the truth, her father's secrets and all, before they could escape? Would they learn whether her father intended to shield her or put her in greater danger? With no time left, the next chapter hung heavily in the air, poised to unveil everything. Would their desperate grasp at clarity lead to liberation or doom? Daniel's eyes darted nervously, scanning the shadows outside, the fear palpable in the air. Grace's pulse quickened. She held the first letter tightly, her fingers trembling as she imagined the secrets written inside, secrets that could save them or doom them. When Daniel turned back toward them, the fight in his gaze had transformed into a cold determination. "Grab whatever you can, a pen, a flashlight, anything useful. We need to prepare." The urgency in his voice sent a jolt through Grace. How could they prepare for something so unknowable? Alyssa fumbled in her backpack, pulling out a small flashlight and a notepad. "Here. We can jot down anything important from the letters." Grace nodded, swallowing hard. She pushed the letters to the center of the narrow table and stared at the envelopes, the faint scent of paper and ink mixing with her anxieties. I can do this. I need to do this." She took a deep breath and opened the first letter. As she unfolded the fragile page, the faint rustle felt loud and intrusive, amplifying her fear. The words danced before her eyes, and she began to read aloud, trying to steady her shaking voice. Dear Grace, if you're reading this, then you are in danger. There are people looking for what I've discovered, things that could ruin lives, including yours. You must be careful. Words blurred as tears pooled in her eyes. Did her father really believe this? Was he warning her about people who could hurt them? Her heart ached with confusion. What does it say? Daniel urged, leaning closer, each word leaving his lips like a prayer. Things that could ruin lives. She paused, wiping away tears that threatened to spill. He knew. He knew something was wrong. A muffled sound broke their concentration. Daniel immediately moved to the window, adrenaline spiking again. They shouldn't be here yet. We need to hurry. His whisper was urgent, coated with fear. Keep reading, Grace, Alyssa encouraged, her voice steady even as her eyes darted around, searching for threats. With shaky hands, Grace continued. Their SA scheme involving corrupt officials, deals that put innocent lives at risk. I can't be specific because I don't know who I can trust. The weight of her father's worry settled between them. He was protecting me, Grace whispered, realization dawning on her amidst the chaos. He didn't just leave behind a heavy burden. He left me the truth. And we need to act on it, Daniel said, the urgency in his tone amplifying again. If he alerted you, then it's up to us to finish this. But how? Grace asked, desperation leaking into her voice. What if it's too late? She looked between them, both faces filled with determination yet shadowed by fear. We're just kids. Kids or not, Alyssa replied fiercely, we have to be brave. We can't let fear rule us. As Grace scanned the letter again, a sentence caught her eye, a name that suddenly felt like a lifeline amidst the storm of anxiety. He wrote about someone who might help us. A contact, maybe? Daniel's expression hardened. If it's a contact, we need to figure out where they are before they find us first. But what if they're in on it? Alyssa chimed in, her brows knitted. We can't trust anyone. No one but us, Daniel asserted. The conviction in his voice sent warmth through Grace's chest, a flicker of hope ignited amidst worry. We'll take a chance. It's all we have. Before she could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed outside, each thud sending a surge of ice down her spine. Time was slipping away, and the stakes were escalating with every second. With the weight of the letters heavy in her hands, Grace felt the world closing in. Ruined lives, deception, and now, her father's voice felt like a thread pulling her forward. Daniel glanced back through the window. They're getting closer, but what exactly were they stepping into? When hope collided with danger, would they find salvation or destructively walk deeper into the dark? Every heartbeat begged for answers, and time was running out. Grace could feel her heart hammering in her chest as she laid the letters on the table, a part of her desperate to decipher the chaos that surrounded them. The footsteps outside grew louder and more urgent, slamming against the ground like a grim countdown. Daniel's tense posture and Alyssa's wide eyes confirmed what they all knew: they were out of time. Stay close, Daniel hissed, peeking out of the window one more time. We have to move now. What about the letters? Grace managed to whisper, her mind racing with the realities of her father's warnings. Would sticking around to read more seal their fates? They are important, Daniel replied, glancing at the letters as if they were his lifeline. But we can't risk being discovered. We need to get somewhere safe. You're the one they're after, Grace. Let us figure out our next step on the move. The gravity of his statement settled over her, but in her gut, she felt a flicker of bravery ignite. Then let us go. We'll take the letters with us, she declared. She stuffed them into her backpack, almost cradling them against her chest, as if they were the only things that mattered in this world of uncertainty. Alyssa gathered her things, her flashlight flickering with a dying beam. "Let us head for the back door," she suggested, her voice steady even though her hands trembled. "We might have a better chance of sneaking out unseen." With a determined nod, the trio tiptoed toward the exit. Grace's nerves crackled like raw electricity as they approached the back door. The harsh breaths of fear burst from Daniel as he turned the knob, glancing back at Grace one last time. Even in a moment of terror, he seemed strong, a protective shield standing before her. Outside, the night air was cool and heavy, wrapping around them like a wet blanket. "We should head to the old oak tree in my backyard," Daniel whispered. "It's thick enough to cover us if they come looking." They stumbled forward in hushed panic, darting toward the dark shape of the tree. "Do you think they'll see us?" Grace murmured, her mind racing. "What if they're everywhere?" "We don't have that luxury to worry," Daniel replied, urgency edging his tone. "We need to keep moving." The shadows danced around them as they reached the oak tree, pressing themselves against its trunk. The hollow trunk offered a small enclave almost like a sanctuary, but as they huddled together, Grace felt the weight of eyes piercing the darkness. Minutes felt like hours as they strained to listen to the sounds around them. This was it, the moment when everything could shatter. Her breath hitched in her throat as she opened her backpack, revealing the precious letters lying there silently, waiting to spill their secrets. "Do you think we can trust the contact in the letter?" Alyssa asked, breaking the tense silence. "We have to," Daniel replied, glancing over the letters. "It's our only shot." Suddenly, the sound of shouting pierced through the night, close enough that both Grace and Alyssa stiffened. "Go!" Daniel urged. "We can't linger here." They squeezed through branches, the night thick around them. Each step felt harder, the fear constricting them like a vice. With their hearts pounding furiously in their chests, they made their way toward the glow of the streetlights ahead, where shadows mixed with uncertain hopes. But as they ventured forward, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that something was hunting not just her, but them. "No matter what happens," Daniel said, voice steady but low, "we stick together. We're stronger this way." They moved through the darkness, each hoping their next choice would lead them toward safety. But would it lead them to trust, or betrayal? The trees loomed over them, secrets whispering that they would soon have to confront. Choices lay ahead, choices that could alter everything, thrusting them deeper into a web that perhaps they couldn't escape. As they stepped into the flickering streetlight, anticipation collided with dread. What awaited them was just a breath away. Would they uncover the truth, or would they find themselves ensnared in a danger far greater than they had imagined? The streetlights cast flickering shadows against the pavement as the trio edged closer to the corner. Grace's heart raced. Each step felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an unimaginable moment. She glanced behind them, half expecting to see figures emerging from the night, a shadowy reminder that they were not safe yet. "Where to next?" Alyssa whispered, her breath quickening, glancing at Daniel for direction. "There's a shortcut through the park," he replied, eyes darting around. "It'll get us past the main street. But we have to be quick and quiet." Grace felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. The park? It felt like a gamble, a place where darkness mingled with secrets. But Daniel's face was set in determination, and that gave her the strength to nod. "Okay, let's stick close and move fast," she urged, fighting the fear crawling up her spine. They slipped into the park, the trees forming an almost suffocating canopy above them. The rustling leaves, the occasional snap of a twig underfoot, felt amplified in the silence. Everything seemed heightened, the world had slowed down, each sound louder than the last. As they made their way deeper into the park, a flash of white caught Grace's eye. She froze. A figure stood just a few yards away, backlit by a street lamp on the edge of the park. "There's someone there," Grace hissed, panic flooding her voice. "It could be a guard, we need to," Daniel started, but was cut off as the figure turned, revealing a silhouette. "Is that?" Alyssa whispered, squinting at the shape. Before Grace could react, the figure stepped forward, emerging into the light. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Matt, their friend from school. Grace. Alyssa. Is that you? Matt? Grace's voice cracked with disbelief. What are you doing here? I came as soon as I heard. I figured you'd need help. He said, stepping out of the shadows and glancing nervously behind him. I didn't know where else to go. Relief flooded through Grace, mingling with the urgency that still pressed heavily on her chest. We really need to get out of here. They're looking for us. Do you have a plan? He asked, eyes darting between his friends. In a way, Daniel interjected. We have letters that could lead us to a contact who might know how to help us. But, we need to be careful, especially now. Grace watched the flicker of determination on Matt's face blend with his worry. I believe you can trust me, he said firmly. Whatever's in those letters, it's important enough to risk everything, right? Yes, Grace replied, her heart pulsing with hope and fear. It's our last shot, Matt. We need to stay one step ahead of them. Without waiting for a response, Daniel began leading them toward a grove of poplar trees. This way, he urged, his voice barely above a whisper. They weaved through the trees, the tension palpable as they listened to the night. The letters felt like they were burning a hole in Grace's backpack. What secrets were they holding? Maybe we should take a peek at one, Alyssa suggested suddenly. It could help us decide if we can trust this contact. No, Daniel said swiftly. We can't risk it. We have to follow the plan. But Grace hesitated, the urge to know flooding her thoughts. As they reached the edge of the park, the lights of the town flickered ahead, like tiny beacons of safety. Just then, the shouts began anew, echoing through the park, growing louder and more frantic. They were being hunted. Move! Daniel exclaimed, shooting Grace a look that was both urgent and piercing. Now! They took off, sprinting into the open street, feeling a mix of adrenaline and dread. The letters thudded against Grace's back with each frantic step, reminding her of the weight they truly carried, more than just paper, but a key to understanding what was at stake. Where's the contact? Grace panted, trying to keep pace with the others. Matt pulled out his phone, tapping on it frantically. Here. It's someone nearby who said they could help, but I don't know if we can trust them. Can we afford not to? Daniel replied, eyes scanning the area. Time's running out. As they rounded a corner, the community center came into view, a large building that felt both welcoming and ominous. Would they find safety there, or was it another trap? Grace felt the uncertainty coil around her like vines. Get ready, Daniel warned quietly. Whatever happens next, we need to stick together. They hesitated momentarily, standing in shadows, breathless, hearts pounding like drums. The next moment could change everything, spinning their lives in a direction they couldn't predict. Would this contact finally lead them to the truth, or would it lead to their downfall? As they stepped forward, a sense of foreboding settled over them. What if this choice plunged them into something far darker? Would they be stepping into a lifeline, or a trap? The community center loomed above them, a beacon that promised answers or perhaps danger. Grace exchanged cautious glances with Daniel, Matt, and Alyssa. The gravity of their situation pressed down on her. Her heart pounded like a drum, each beat reminding her of the uncertain path ahead. Are we ready for this? She whispered, fear lacing her words. We're in this together, Daniel replied, his voice firm but gentle. We have no other choice. We can't run from the truth anymore. Taking a deep breath, Grace nodded and pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, breaking the stillness inside. The scent of old wood and fresh paint lingered in the air. They stepped into the dimly lit foyer, where shadows flickered against the walls, hinting at the unknown lurking within. Stay close, Daniel urged, as they moved deeper into the building. The tension was thick, almost suffocating, as they scanned their surroundings. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, an older man wearing a worn jacket and a determined look. "You must be Grace," he said, stepping forward, urgency etched across his features. "I'm Ben. Your father sent me a message. I didn't think you'd arrive so soon." The room buzzed with electricity, hearts racing at the mention of her father. "What do you know?" Grace asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Ben took a deep breath, glancing at the others. "I have information that connects to those letters. Your father uncovered something major, and it's dangerous more than you realize." "Dangerous how?" Alyssa interjected, stepping protectively closer to Grace. "They're not just secrets," Ben continued. "Your father became involved with people who will stop at nothing to keep this hidden. You're in jeopardy because of what he found. They're already searching for you." A chill ran down Grace's spine. What did he discover? She fought to keep her voice steady, the weight of her fears clawing at her throat. "It involves corrupt officials and a network manipulating lives," Ben explained, his tone urgent. "Your father feared for your safety when he wrote those letters. He wanted you to know the truth but also to protect you. So he was trying to shield us." Grace processed, feeling the shards of her father's complex choices stab at her heart. "Yes," Ben nodded, gesturing them to follow him further into the building. "You have to understand, Grace. This isn't just about your father anymore. The longer you stay in the dark, the greater the danger you face." They followed him into a small office, filled with files and maps scattered across the desk. Ben pulled out a folder, thick and worn. "I retrieved this from the locker of a contact who went missing. I believe it contains vital information on your father's discovery and potential allies who can help. Right now, we have to decide what to do with it," Daniel murmured, glancing nervously at the door, hearing distant footsteps echoing through the halls outside. Grace opened the folder. Inside, she found papers detailing operations, names of individuals connected to her father's investigation, and headshots of men and women who had previously been involved in suspicious activities. The revelation was overwhelming. "How do you expect us to take this on?" Matt asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. "We're just kids." Ben leaned in, his eyes fierce. "You are more than just kids. You've shown strength and courage that many older than you lack. If you want to honor your father's legacy and stay safe, you must learn the truth and fight back." Grace felt a swell of determination rising within her. Honoring her father's memory became a driving force. She looked at her friends, the bonds they formed over perilous moments solidifying into something unbreakable. "Whatever it takes, I promise we'll figure this out together," Grace stated, her voice steady, the flicker of hope igniting in her heart. "Let us gather what we need and move. But we have to be careful." Daniel's words rang with urgency. Just as they began to collect the files, the door swung open with a violent bang, casting light into the dimly lit room. A team of law enforcement officials flooded in, shouting orders, their faces stern and unforgiving. "Everyone freeze. Hands in the air." One officer bellowed, causing sheer panic to erupt around the group. The immediate threat loomed large and real, overshadowing the progress they had just made. Grace's mind raced. This wasn't how any of it was supposed to go. They were so close to the truth, but now it felt as though everything was slipping through her fingers again. She could almost hear her father's voice echoing warnings in her subconscious. "Stop!" Ben shouted, stepping protectively in front of Grace and her friends. "These kids don't know anything. You need to," but his words were drowned out by chaos. The officers moved in closer, threatening to shatter any hope they had left. "Grace!" Daniel yelled, panic seeping into his voice. "We can't let them take those letters." As the officers advanced, Grace felt her heart pound harder. But amidst the chaos, a fire ignited in her chest. She couldn't let her father's story end here. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her future, for her son, for every soul affected by the corruption her father had tried to unravel. Before she could think, she spun on her heel and bolted toward the back door, her friends following close behind, adrenaline surging through their veins. They burst into the night, the cool air rushing over them like a fallen blanket of freedom. "This way!" Grace shouted, leading the charge through the unfamiliar streets, determined to find safety and truth. As they raced away from danger, breathing hard, Grace understood that she was no longer just a daughter seeking the truth about her father. She was a force, fueled by resilience and love, ready to rewrite her story, no matter what challenges lay ahead. With every step into the unknown, she held tight to the letters that carried hopes, fears, and newfound strength. They were racing toward answers. This was the beginning of her transformation, and she would not back down. Whatever it took, she was ready to forge the future she wanted, a future built on honesty, courage, and love. So the chase continued, and although uncertainty loomed, Grace knew one thing for certain: she wasn't alone anymore. The transformation that began with a heartwarming kiss during her vows had ignited a passion, a fierce love for truth that was now ready to face the world head-on. It's time for change. It's time for action. If you feel this story moved you, it's time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories filled with adventure and heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment down below with your thoughts and feelings about this emotional ending. I want to hear from you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this transformation. Only true fans like you understand how important this support is. Let us grow this amazing community together.